episode 65 of the Stepover pod. That's right, episode number, we didn't even bother looking anything up, so it's just 65. I am Jim. With me as always is Max Rappaport. Max, how are you doing?
Doing great, Jim.
Max, how's the weather there in Seattle?
Today was actually unseasonably rainy. It is.
Is that such a thing in Seattle?
Well, so everyone that I tell I've moved to Seattle or talked about moving to Seattle, they're like, "Oh, it rains all the time. That must suck." But it's actually like really it gets about the same rain overall as Philadelphia, but it's just condensed into the winter. So from November to March and April, it just like rains every day basically, and like drizzles. And then the summer is like when I moved here last August or last July, it was in the middle of what ended up, I think, being 50 straight days of no rain. So it's kind of like Southern California in the summer where it's just like dry and warm. So we just went like a few weeks without rain, and then today was like thunderstorms and stuff. Well,
it actually just started raining here in South Philadelphia. So I just heard the splatter on the windows. But I bet it better be good, not rainy weather when I go out there.
It's good.
Month?
They tell me they do tell me that July 4th is like the cutoff of like that's when it is at its best, and you can be pretty confident that like anytime after July 4th and before like September that it's going to be sunny.
Cool, because I'll be out there late July. We will most likely not record a podcast when I'm there.
Hey, we might.
We're going to be able to talk about like July 20th. I'm on vacation. I ain't sitting inside your apartment doing a podcast with you, even though I'm staying with you.
LeBron James Instagram stuff, off-season
stuff. Also,
it's cool.
It's cool that I stay with you, right? Have we talked about this?
Yeah. You're good.
Cool, perfect.
Let's work out the details on the pod.
Let's do that. Yeah, I just want to meet your dog. Is the only thing. That's what I'm excited about. I'm just coming. I'm not even visiting you. I'm just visiting your dog.
Can you read off your record locator for your flight? That'd be helpful too.
Oh, I don't even have that. I don't have that. I think I know what time my flight leaves. If anyone wants to just look it up for me and then tweet it at me, I'm not gonna give that information out.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Brian Colangelo, since we last spoke, is in a different state of employment than he was then. Then he was employed, and now he is not. Shall we discuss?
Let's talk about it. I feel like it's been a little while in Burnergate years. It's been like 15 years since he got fired or since he resigned. Yes,
so it has been.
We don't need to talk about it that much, but let's give our like basic reactions, and also I guess talk a little bit about Brett Brown being like the de facto president of basketball operations for the like time being, and seemingly through free agency unless something crazy happens.
Yeah, the collar is currently shrinking like that wilting rose in Beauty and the Beast. The announcement was on, I believe, was it Thursday?
That sounds right. Yeah, Thursday morning.
Yeah, it was Thursday morning. I was at work. Our good friend Patrick Wall, who I work with, sprinted. I say sprinted. He said he didn't sprint, but I'm pretty sure he sprinted down to where I was because I didn't look at my Woj alert yet. With his fists in the air, very excited about it. So that was great. It was. Let me ask you this. Let's start off with this. Did you fully expect them to actually let go of him, and did the process of them letting go of him go the way you expected?
So, I guess I'll give a breakdown of where my head was at throughout. Like day one, I was thinking like, okay, there's like a 50% chance he stays or 60%. This is like when the article came out. I was still thinking like, okay, more than likely they're going to deflect and he's going to stay and nothing's going to really come of this. Then once the Sixers came out with their statement that they were taking it seriously and investigating and all that, I was like, okay, they didn't defend him. They didn't deflect. They were taking it seriously, and it seemed like you wouldn't phrase it quite that way if you were trying to just move past it, move on and find a new slant, as it were.
As you were, yeah.
So that was then I was like, okay, he's probably has like a 20 or 25% chance of staying at this point. Then that like went down a little bit as Twitter detectives started, uncovering even more, and like message boards and all that stuff, and the stuff with his wife. I was like, okay, this seems like he's definitely going to have to be fired. Then there was a point like where I really thought they weren't going to fire him, where stuff started coming out, and they just the way that they said it would probably be Friday. Then the whole weekend went by, and then Monday nothing happened. Tuesday nothing happened. They're reporting from Keith Pompey, I think, was like the team is trying to figure out if they can, move on with him, and build back trust. And I was like, okay, this seems like what you'd put out if you're trying to keep him. So it was kind of a roller coaster, but I think in the end, the sense I get is that some of that was Colangelo, posturing. Some of that was the team like trying to maybe do him a favor in terms of like, doing a bit of damage control for his reputation on the way out. And all right, you're allowing you to resign, willfully for the good of the team, all that bullshit, and put out there that, the team doesn't think that he had knowledge of the accounts or didn't run the accounts, all that stuff. Like, seems like, okay, this is for his benefit, and to just do this peacefully and not have him, cause a fuss on the way out.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had the same thing to do. I kept going back and forth. Each day that passed, I'm like, all right, it's not going to happen. They're going to keep him. And then Woj would report something, and I'm like, all right, well, that's wavering. And I'm like, he's definitely got to be gone. And then I think about it more. I'm like, well, him and Woj don't really seem to get along. Woj doesn't seem to like him very much, so maybe it's part of that. Each person's source is on a different side of the camp, so who's telling who what. And then as they brought the investigation thing in, and the way that the actual release was worded and stuff, and with Brian releasing his release, still claiming his innocence, which was also sent out by Sixers, at least to the same list that the Sixers PR sends their releases out to, which was also, a solid to do. That struck me as he kept protesting to the very, very end, and they were like, listen, this is your last chance to say you resign or we're going to fire you. So it's now or never. And then he was like, shit, okay, I'm resigning. And then throwing my wife immediately under the bus as quickly as possible. I do want to say this before we move on from the Colangelo thing and on to kind of talking about a little bit of the future and what Brett Brown's role is in this and what it means. Ben Dietrich, who wrote this whole thing, he has a podcast, the Cookies Pod, I believe it's called, or just Cookies. It's on Spotify as well. Their most recent episode, he read off some other still ballin' tweets and enough unconed sources tweets that were not in the report and that people hadn't really found out as much about because those accounts were locked, that kind of give a whole new angle to it. For example, I will not steal their thunder, you should listen to the podcast, but there's a whole angle where the Colangelo family seems to believe that it's Daryl Morey's fault that Mattia Colangelo didn't get into MIT. Which is a very fascinating new slant to the whole story as well.
To MIT?
So definitely give that a listen. Yeah, Mattia Colangelo wanted to get into MIT, apparently.
Does MIT even have a basketball team? Like, isn't he a college basketball player?
Yeah, but I think, he wanted to go to MIT.
Yeah, I guess if you get into MIT and you're like a bench player for University of Chicago, you probably take the MIT route. University of Chicago is a good school, though. It's
a very good school. I mean, obviously, if you were even borderline MIT, you have places to go, but supposedly they think there's some kind of connection with the Sloan Conference and Morey and MIT and Hinkie as well, basically being petty and crushing the dreams of an 18-year-old boy, which sounds bonkers and like is fucking weird as hell. Man. But yeah, definitely give that a listen. There's a couple other ones too. There's some stuff about Woj in there, some stuff about LeBron. Definitely worth the listen.
I will say, could we, before we move on to the future, do you believe that it was actually only Barbara who was tweeting?
I believe it was mostly Barbara.
I agree with that. I think mostly is correct. I think only is impossible for me to believe. Just reading the cadence of the tweets and the wording, and I mean, like, Barbara's not tweeting about like fringe 80s players and teams and like going into enormous detail about the like media slant at the time in like the 80s around the Detroit Pistons. Like that's ridiculous to think. And also there was just weird stuff where it was like, okay, this sounds like something that Jerry Colangelo would care to tweet about and not that Barbara would care to tweet about.
Right. There was a lot of stuff where like obviously the person tweeting those stuff knew a lot more of the ins and outs and like backroom dealing stuff than I did. But there was some stuff in there that where to me the only explanation for some of that stuff is that either it wasn't Barbara on some of those tweets or that Barbara was thinking about something, texted Brian, said, hey, what's the story with this? He told her, and then she tweeted. Because there was some stuff that, like, even as the spouse of a GM, you wouldn't know and or care about.
Yeah.
Like it had the knowledge of someone who actually is inside the organization, not the spouse of someone.
Yeah, and it's also like, look, I guess I understand. I'm not someone who looks at this situation and goes like, how could he be so careless to like share details of the organization with his wife? Like, I understand that every general manager does that, and most people who work for teams or work for companies or whoever do that. I mean, that's just like pretty normal stuff. I think the more concerning thing, I think the thing that gets missed, and I haven't seen a lot of defense of Brian Colangelo, but I think the only defense you could have would be like, look, he didn't know, and this is like, everyone talks to their wives about stuff like this, and it was really on her that she had turned around and tweeted. And if it's true that like he really didn't know anything and had no idea, and she just did this on her own, like that is kind of shitty. But the reality is that clearly Brian Colangelo feels all these things that were tweeted. It might as well have been tweeted by him because it was clearly his beliefs. Like Barbara, his wife, did not come up with. I mean, like she may have known from him the details of Nerlens Noel and Embiid with the dancing at the Meek Mill concert and all that, but like that felt very much like this is how Brian Colangelo is talking to her about these situations, and then she's like, yeah, fuck that guy. I'm going to get on Twitter and tweet about it. Like, it's not like Brian was defending, like, look, it wasn't that bad that he danced at the Meek Mill. Like, clearly Brian Colangelo went home that night and was like, what the fuck? Like, how could he do this? And he's lying about his knee, and, you know. So there's really no turning back. There's no separating Barbara's tweets from what Colangelo believed.
I'll go as far as to say this. Even if Barbara's tweets were the exact opposite of what Brian believed, it didn't matter. The trust is broken.
I agree, yeah. It's also, I guess it's just a question of, like, do you see him as completely blameless? And I don't.
No.
I see him as more blameless. I see him as more blameless than, when I thought it was him tweeting, that was one thing, and I do think there's a difference between the two, but I don't think it matters. And I think you're right that it would. Agree. And I think you're right that it wouldn't even matter, even if those had entirely been her beliefs. Like the wife of the general manager is shitting on Joel Embiid and Markelle Fultz on Twitter. Like there is no coming back from that if you intend to keep Joel Embiid and Markelle Fultz and attract free agents.
Exactly. Yeah, you're 100% right.
Something I thought about, let's move on, but one thing I just thought about today that I hadn't even really considered is imagine how much we would have been shitting ourselves the week or the 8 days or whatever that it took for him to get fired if Embiid hadn't signed an extension last summer and was coming into restricted free agency.
It'd be insane, yeah.
We'd be...
Yeah, I think that was the case, it wouldn't have taken 8 days.
Yeah.
I also think if his last name wasn't Colangelo, it wouldn't take 8 days either.
Yeah, it is crazy
how... If his name was Brian Jones, he would have been out on day 2.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy how silent. And I think, like I said, there weren't many people defending him, but I will say that the juxtaposition between, like, Hinkie bringing shame to the team angle and those same people when the Colangelo thing broke was, like, they weren't defending Brian Colangelo, but they also weren't calling for his head the way they were calling for Hinkie's head when he traded MCW because that brought shame to the franchise or whatever.
Yep. So how do you? Let me ask you this. So going forward, before we talk about, and I think there's probably some questions later about who the next GM people are, or could be. So we'll save that for the end. But the current status, of which it seems that the Sixers will at the very least go through the draft without a GM in place, and likely probably enter free agency without a GM in place. Maybe right around then, before then. But Brett Brown is working as the interim de facto president of basketball operations and general manager with the staff that's in place. How different do you think it is? And do you think it is a negative, and if so, by what kind of degree?
I think, okay, I'll answer a couple questions. So I think that it probably makes them more conservative in their approach to the draft. I think that they'll probably, whereas I thought when Colangelo was there, and just generally, I thought there was a chance that like they come up at 10, the Spurs are still shopping Kawhi, or there's some talk about that. I could see the Sixers like swinging a big deal in which they moved like Fultz in 10 or Saric 10 and Covington or something and tried to get a star player like that. I don't see that anymore. Like, I don't think you make that move if you have an interim GM and the interim GM is basically a guy who's not going to be in that basketball role. Like if they had promoted Eversley, I think there would have been a chance that you'd kind of go, okay, maybe they're just going to make Eversley the GM, in which case you treat whatever this interim period as like he's the GM and he'll make moves if he has to, as long as the ownership agrees and Brett Brown agrees. With
like a trial period.
With the trial period. But with Brett Brown in that role, I don't think you do anything that's franchise altering.
No, I agree. I think you definitely answer the phone if it rings, and you go from there. But I don't think they're going to be making many phone calls.
I agree, and I think that's probably for the best. Like, I don't want them to. My ideal offseason is you try to sign LeBron, you try to sign Paul George. If there's a Kawhi deal that's out there that's not breaking the bank, I would be interested. But if you strike out on that, just do what you did last year. Just sign some one-year guys. Try to win 50-plus games this year, and then go into next summer with that same cap space.
Right.
In a year where you have Klay Thompson, you'll have more free agents, potentially LeBron if he signs a 1 year or goes back to the Cavs on a 1 year. Like, you can play that game again, that free agency game again. So I'd rather do that than just like, oh shit, we didn't get anyone. Let's go out and sign Avery Bradley to a big deal. Like which they won't do if Brett Brown's the guy.
Though at the same time, going back to the trade thing for a quick minute, I believe it was it Sanjay Gupta? Is that his name?
Wait, isn't Sanjay Gupta the CNN?
He is yes. Who was the guy that was under Hinkie? His name was Gupta, right?
Yeah. Why am I blanking on his name?
I don't know. This is all coming off as terribly racist on my part.
Sachin Gupta. You were close.
Sachin Gupta.
Yeah,
God, was fucking
it's pretty close. I feel like that's close enough that it's not racist.
I hope so. But so Hinkie had said that he was essentially the architect of the Kings pick swap deal.
Yeah.
And Hinkie before that in Houston, I think Morey said it, and that's how Hinkie got the job in Philly, was he was essentially the architect of the Harden deal. So who's to say that Eversley doesn't have something already cooked up that they've been working on, that now that Brett's in there instead of Brian, it's not just going to be the same thing. So if there's something like that happened, that there's already kind of a structure in place, they've already talked about this in meetings, and they're ready to go forward with it, I could see it happening. But if they haven't put a package together yet, or like talked about it, or really put a framework together, they're not going to start from scratch on a big deal, I don't think. Or even like a medium-sized deal.
Well, and I would say I would say pretty certainly that if they were intending to make some big deal in the draft or had some plan for free agency, like that was already in place. Like I think teams put that in place far in advance. But I think for me, the fact that they didn't promote Eversley to this interim role, that they made it Brett Brown, tells me that they're not looking to promote from within. Maybe I'm wrong. They could, like Ned Cohen could be the GM 2 months from now, or Eversley. Who knows? But I just feel like if that was the direction they were leaning towards, they would have just put Eversley or Ned Cohen in that position right now. I mean, the fact that they didn't makes me feel like I think the biggest thing is that it's such an attractive position right now. I mean, like Woj was reporting that current GMs are asking, like, in my head goes to like Rich Cho or Neil O'Shea or guys Sam Presti, like guys who are good GMs in lackluster positions or positions that don't have a lot of future are considering, and I just threw those names out there, but would consider the job. And if that's the case, like if you think you can get Sam Presti, like go do that and let Sam Presti make this team in his image. Like don't make a big move before he gets a chance to do that, and then he comes in and it's like, okay, his potential to shape the team has been like hindered a lot. Like I don't want to do that. I don't want also that to hurt their chances of bringing in a top level GM. It's an interesting opportunity where they can actually attract like a guy that they, a Hinkie kind of guy where somebody that they think can be their GM for the next decade instead of, just a retread, whatever guy.
And I think, as much as it's probably like the most attractive GM opening in all of pro sports in like at least 10 years probably. Mm-hmm. And the team's in great position. It doesn't mean the job is going to be easy. So I don't think you can just go with, the first guy you think of. And, people are, I'm sure they're, like you said, like Woj reported, there are people trying to get out of contracts. And if they can, that's going to take some more time as well. But I do think that, I still think there is still a chance that, if Sam Presti calls, I don't know Mark Eversley, but I don't think Mark Eversley is going to get the job over Sam Presti, for example. or Rich Cho even. But I think we constantly hear, almost to the point that it can't be said enough. Like Zach Lowe was always saying it, for example, that like you almost cannot overestimate how respected Brett Brown is in this league. And I think if the Sixers were convinced that they would have someone in place by free agency, then they would go the Eversley or the Cohen route for right now. But that says to me, like, we want him leading our free agent pitch anyway, so we might as well put Brett up there because people love Brett, people respect Brett, and people like Brett, more importantly. So he's our best bet to actually land these free agents, which I think says a lot about Brett and has a lot about the character and the trust they have in him. And I will steal a line from Dietrich's pod that they had this weekend where they basically said that Brett Brown's like the Chewbacca of the process, where everyone around him dies, but he just keeps living on. And it's exactly right. And I think he deservedly so, because, again, like for everything we hear from inside the league is that like people don't have a single bad word outside of, still ballin' about Brett Brown.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable that he's made it through this as really the face of it. I mean, I guess Hinkie was the face of the tank, but like Brett Brown was the guy who every night, every game had to talk 3 times, like shoot around the morning up, pregame, postgame, like was the face in that sense of the tank and of everything, and has really weathered it and somehow built up like a really strong reputation around the league in a time where you'd think that a coach would just kind of get rolled up in that and that people would just see him as a loser or see him as a guy who, had created a bad culture. And I think like people really saw, to their credit, people really around the league really saw what he was doing and the culture he was creating. And
he was like the team's press secretary, but he also had to coach everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to be the press secretary of a shit show or what was, in terms of
there are many
results.
people you can ask, I'm sure.
Yeah, in terms of what was results-wise a shit show and have people like you and think that you're doing a good job.
What I'm basically saying in that in many ways Brett Brown is Sean Spicer.
Yeah. I don't love
the
that. The
comparison's there. It's there.
Is Brian Colangelo the mooch then?
Oh,
he lasted about as long as the mooch in GM terms. 2 years is a very short time.
I think the mooch still follows me on Twitter, so maybe the mooch is listening to the pod. And if the mooch is listening to the pod, I will say this: hey, mooch, we're not going to have you on the pod, man. Stop listening. It's fine. So do you want to move on to big boards now, or you want to see something else first?
Well, I think that's all about all I have to say. I agree with you though that I think it doesn't really I don't think it's going to negatively affect their pitch in free agency. Like I don't think anyone was coming to Philly because of Brian. And I think Brett Brown being the guy in that room and getting Brian Colangelo the hell out of there, obviously after the ringer thing, but even that aside, I don't think is going to negatively affect. And I also think there's a chance that whether they bring in someone before free agency or they're in talks with somebody like Sam Presti or like O'Shea or someone who's respected like that, or even David Griffin, that might be an appealing thing to someone like LeBron or Paul George. And also the possibility, if it's LeBron, to be able to like give him some say in that, to have that be part of the pitch. Like, look, we're going to be bringing in an entirely new front office, basically, or at least a new head of the front office, and then probably also some new people within that. Like, LeBron can have a say in that and can feel involved in that process, which can only be a good thing.
Yeah. Quickly before we move on to big boards, I will say this, if anyone cares in the slightest. Tomorrow, Monday, June 11th, if anyone is not listening to this tomorrow, Monday, June 11th, the Sixers are, in fact, having a group workout, including a couple players who are on both of our big boards, Miles Bridges and Lonnie Walker IV, with a couple of other people in the middle, Drew Eubanks, Shake Milton, Jared Nickens, and Nooni Omat. That is tomorrow. So it's kind of starting. I feel like this probably would have been happening already if the Burnergate didn't happen. But we're getting into the actual like workouts and group workouts and solo workouts. We're going to have press quotes and availability after each individual workout where you're seeing this kind of stuff. So exciting times. So Max, we each went to number 12. I went to 13 because I had to one up you a little bit. Let's both give our 1 and 2 because they're the two same players, but we have the order flipped.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should go 1 down because Sixers picking a 10, we both went about 12 or 13 deep. Probably more interesting because once, if we do 12 working our way to 1, it stops being interesting once you get past like 8 because you assume those guys won't be there.
Yeah, right, exactly. So let's do, I know who your 1 and 2 are. You sent me your list. I didn't send you my list because, again, I wanted to one-up you. And also I was trying to go to the store, but the store was closed. I have at number 1 Luka Doncic, and I have at number 2 DeAndre Ayton. You have those two guys flipped.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of shit too, like more shit than I thought I would.
I felt like I was being weird by having Doncic number 1, and I do think it could very easily flip both ways. But tell me why you have Ayton at 1 and Doncic at 2.
I guess I look at Ayton and he's just such a monster. I mean, he's 7'1", with 7'5" wingspan. He's not even 19 yet, and has like a Dwight Howard upper body. Is an awesome offensive player. He can shoot from outside. He can score with his back to the basket. He's pretty quick with the ball in his hands. He's a good rebounder. The only thing that keeps him from being Towns Embiid level prospect. And I guess interesting to use Towns because Towns is maybe this is the biggest thing keeping Towns from being an Embiid level prospect is the fact that Ayton was a pretty bad defender, pretty awful defender in college. Now, the thing is, I guess you can look at it two ways. It's like, is it the Karl Towns effect where you keep thinking like, all right, he has the tools, he's so big, he can he should be able to defend pick and roll because he's pretty quick, he has a long wingspan, he is strong enough to hold his own in the paint. Like, he has all the tools. I guess the question is he going to be Karl Towns or is he going to be like Ben Simmons, where Karl Towns, you just assume like, well, at some point he'll get there, and now I think we're starting to realize maybe he won't. With Ben Simmons, it's like, okay, he's clearly a one and done. He's the number one player in the class or up there since the year started. And, you kind of look and you go like, all right, do I care that he is like lackadaisical on defense in this 1 year in college? Because I think people said the same thing about Ben Simmons. And obviously, like, once he started giving a shit, was a very good defender at the pro level. So, and I think for me, Ayton feels more like that. Like, it doesn't feel like he's lacking anything that should keep him from being at least like an average defender for his position. Mm-hmm. And he's such a talented offensive player and has so many things going for him and has the body and the athleticism. And I'm sorry, he's turning 20 soon, so he is a little bit older. I said turning 19. But he's just like, I don't know, you just look at him and you're like, okay, that is like, he basically looks like David Robinson.
He does.
And it's hard for me to imagine passing up on that. And I really like Doncic, but it's hard for me to imagine passing up on that for a guy who also has a lot of flaws. Like, I think people are very willing to overlook the fact that Luka Doncic, like, is not all that athletic. Like, he's shifty with the ball, but he is not an athletic player. He doesn't have an obvious position that he's going to defend in the NBA. I think I watch him and I don't see that same like high level. I don't. At his best, I think DeAndre Ayton is a better prospect than Luka Doncic. I just think Luka Doncic has been more consistent. But I think both are in a tier very close to one another, and then it's a drop-off after that.
Yeah, I have Doncic number 1 and Ayton number 2. Ayton, I do think, is basically a complete lockdown sure thing, and in any other draft, he would obviously be number 1. The fact that Doncic has been showing what he's able to do and growing in front of everyone's eyes for a very long time, because people, you've been able to, and GMs especially in front offices and people, you've been able to watch Luka Doncic play since he was like 16 years old. It's also true of like a DeAndre Ayton or a Mo Bamba, but the competition level he's been playing against is so astounding. I think it's very possible, if not likely, that in the long run, Ayton is the better player of the two. But I think Doncic can do more for you. They're both weak defenders, I think. But I think you can have Like, if Ayton just can't play defense at the NBA level as a man at that size, it's a problem. If Doncic can't play defense in the NBA, it doesn't really matter that much. And that's what really kind of pushes him over. He can have that huge glaring flaw, and it won't fucking matter. Because if he's James Harden, or like I compare him to like a combination of Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker, but he just happens to be 6'8". And if he can't play defense at all, it doesn't matter, because he's only 6'8". You can put him in a 2, have him guard 2s and 3s or whatever, and just try his best, and you have to try to pick up all the slack around him. But if you're tent pole paint guy can't play defense, and that's a much bigger problem than if you're 6'8", 2-3 guard can't play defense. And that's where the difference is for me. That's why I have Doncic 1 and 2 and 8 and 2. But I do think on day one, I think Doncic is the better NBA player. At year 2, 3, they're probably neck and neck. They could be neck and neck their whole careers, but it does. I do think in the very super long run, like 10 plus years down the line, it does seem more likely to me that Ayton has the bigger impact on the NBA. But there's a lot of variables in play between now and then. So that's why I have Doncic number 1, but it's incredibly close.
Yeah, I guess when I project out, it's like I try to think like 5 or 6 years from now, who is more likely to be like all NBA first team? And to me, DeAndre Ayton is that. And I get all the arguments you made, and it's why I like Doncic a lot. But it's hard for me to imagine him being much more than like the 10th, 11th, 12th best player in the league.
But do you think that Doncic is? Let me ask you this: in 5 years, try to take out any context of where they'll end up and the whole path of that. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's more likely in 5 years that Doncic is on a better team than Ayton, or that Ayton's on a better team than Doncic?
Like, who is going to contribute more to winning? Is that kind of your question?
That's why I think Doncic does it, because Ayton could very easily be on an Anthony Davis Pelicans type team without a DeMarcus Cousins.
Totally. So, well, he could be DeMarcus Cousins. That's like the comp that I think makes some sense, is that he is an offensive like phenom, and the difference is that his body is so much better, and he's longer and just more like just has a better body than Cousins does. But I guess that's the difference. Is like I guess I could see DeAndre Ayton being on a bad team and just putting up numbers. I guess you're right in that sense. Like Doncic does have that like Manu Ginobili like downside, I guess. It's like at worst he seems like he would be a very valuable player, sort of like Dario is for the Sixers. Like isn't going to put up crazy numbers on a bad team, but will just be like a solid player on any team. But I still just feel like Ayton. There's a chance that I guess there's that chance that Ayton comes in and it's just like, oh yeah, he just didn't give a shit because he was playing at Arizona for 1 year,
right? Yep.
And knew he didn't really have to try that hard. And
like defense.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and he's 7'1" with a 7'5" wingspan and had never lifted a weight until college, but had like a David Robinson's body. And that guy can like block shots and not get bullied in the paint. Like he doesn't seem like Okafor to me, like in that sense. Yeah. Like he has such a better body than any of those guys who got to that level and just couldn't play defense.
Whichever one goes number 1 is in better shape, because I would much rather be on the Phoenix Suns than the Sacramento Kings, and I think every player would feel that way as well. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's go to number 3. Who do you have at 3 again?
I have Jaren Jackson Jr.
Same.
I like him a lot. To me, he kind of fits in that same thing what you're talking about with Doncic. It's like hard to imagine him not being a good contributor on a good team at very worst. Like to me, he kind of has like an Ibaka role, but I think he could be better than that.
I will say this on the Ringers draft mock draft, which I have in front of me because I love their comps. It says he has shades of millionaires Taj Gibson and billionaires Emile Jefferson, which I just love that.
I may also say Miles Turner, which I agree.
Miles Turner is also on the list. Yeah.
To me, he's kind of like Tristan Thompson if Tristan Thompson had an offensive game and could block shots better than Tristan Thompson can. Like it's that kind of role where he is just like a stout defender and rebounder at the 4 and can play some small ball 5, but also stretch the floor and block shots. Like that to me is super valuable.
I mean, also talking about size, he actually has a longer wingspan and higher standing reach than Ayton as well. Mm-hmm. And he's he's over a year younger, a full year younger. So yeah, I think he's probably. I mean, I think Ayton and Doncic are both locks to be just really, really good players, if not great players, for a very long time. And Jaren Jackson is kind of like being the, I don't know, kind of the forgotten man here, because I feel like everyone's tier one has 2 players in it, and then tier 2 starts with Jaren Jackson.
Yeah,
and I think there's a very.
Oh, go ahead.
There's a very high possibility. Like if this draft goes down as like an all timer, when people talk back about it, they'll always remember Doncic and Ayton. Everyone go, "Oh yeah, shit, Jaren Jackson was in that draft too. Wow," like how almost people do with the LeBron, Wade, and Bosh draft. Or not even Bosh, Melo.
I think
right?
Bosh seems to be that guy. I think in that
Bosh
draft.
does seem that guy, but like because I think Melo has hung on too long. But like Bosh, I was like, oh shit, Bosh was in that draft, and Bosh was really great for a long time. Wow, he's almost that forgotten guy from that crew. So I think that's probably Jaren Jackson's future. But I do think he probably has the, outside of Doncic and Ayton, which is another reason why I think I have him at 3. He probably has the highest floor of anybody in the draft.
Totally. I think probably, too, if I was doing a Sixers board, he's probably number 2 for me after Doncic. Like, Ayton doesn't really register on my Sixers-only board. I think Jaren Jackson is just such an amazing fit on really like any the thing is, he's what the NBA is looking for. He's basically a 3-and-D center or power forward. Yeah. So,
I mean, he is your absolute ideal. Like, if you had to go into a lab, I mean, it would probably be DeAndre Ayton, maybe, but if you had to go into a lab and create your ideal Embiid insurance, it's probably Jaren Jackson.
Well, I think he's better just because he can play alongside him in the meantime, right? Like
exactly.
That's valuable. Do you want to move on to 4?
Yeah.
We probably, I'm imagining, I haven't seen yours, so I'm thinking we're probably going to diverge here.
Who do you have it for?
I have Mo Bamba.
I also have Mo Bamba.
All right.
I don't feel great about it.
All right. I don't tell me where yet, but I'm intrigued to see where Marvin Bagley is for you, because I'm quite low on Marvin Bagley, and a lot of people were giving me shit for that. So I think 4 seems to be like the absolute lowest anyone will put him, and we both have him below that. So, okay, tell me why you like Mo Bamba.
I hate using this word because I don't like when people talk about professional athletes and human beings like
he's a physical specimen. Is that what you're about to say?
He's a fucking freak, man. His wingspan's almost 8 feet. He can shoot the ball, which is fucking bonkers. Like he can even like form a jump shot with his arms, blows my mind, let alone like a consistent and decent one. Which I do think he projects to, especially with the way everyone trains everybody to shoot nowadays. Like you can just fucking put him with Drew Hanlon, and he's fucking set.
Well, he is working with Drew Hanlon.
He is working with Drew Hanlon. I know. I saw that too. He's going to be a fucking terrifying person in the NBA.
That video, I think, single-handedly, the one of him doing the Embiid drills, single-handedly was like, all right, I'm moving him up to 4. He was like 5 for me or 6 for me. I was like, all right, he's 4 now.
Yeah, I have him at 4 because I have him at 4 for like a selfish reason. So I think he probably has a lower floor than a couple of people around him on my list. But I'm just so excited to see him play in the NBA.
Yeah,
he's so long. He's so big. He's smart with his movements. He's like not like built like he's like 7'1", 7'2". He's like 225. He could probably put on some pounds. But he's actually like he picks his spots very well. He's not gonna often get caught up in the air or like trying to cheat for blocks and then get passed around to a wide open guy behind him. Which, like, usually when someone has, like, these physical attributes, they're like, oh, that's all they are. They're just that. But that's not the case with him. I do think he probably, like I said, I think he has the lower floor than people around him. Just because also when you're that big, your body's just probably going to fail you at some point. And I don't know what he can really do outside of, if he gets that shot going, he gets the shot going, but, like, he's not a ton of work on the, in the post. Not much of that. A lot of, he can finish, he can get the rebounds, obviously, but if you get him the ball at like 15 feet, I'm not entirely sure what he's going to do with it. But he's so intriguing, and I just had to put him that high because he just honestly fascinates me, and he's insanely long. I just can't stress that enough. It's fucking insane. It's ridiculous. His standing reach is, according to the Ringer at least, his standing reach is 9 feet 7.5 inches. So essentially, if you're going up for a layup, he can block you without leaving the ground, and that's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, man. I really love his game, and I think to me he kind of reminds me of like late career Kevin Garnett. Like when Kevin Garnett was like just an awesome defender, could hit like mid-range jumper, get a lot of offensive rebounds, and like create second chances. I just think he's gonna be really good. I would love if he somehow falls. I would love the Sixers to draft him, even though it's a weird fit with Embiid. Like I think he could play some four. Just because of his ability to stretch the floor and obviously back up Embiid and give you those minutes. But I think he's going to be awesome. I really like him a lot. Now I'm frequently burned by the super long guy like Sarah Sene, the guy the Sonics drafted in like 2006. I thought he was going to be so fucking good. Yeah. And then counter to that, when Rudy Gobert came out, I was like, I'm not going to get fooled again. Yeah. So I had Rudy Gobert super low. I was like, that guy can't play basketball. He's just a guy with arms, and now he's awesome. So now I'll jump back on Bamba and probably be wrong, but I really like him a lot.
I can't not be on the Bamba train. I'm just so excited to see him, even if he fails. Like it's just going to be so incredible to watch because people like that seem to come on more often. Like Rudy Gobert would have been a wide-eyed wonder that people would have like paid all their life savings to see in the 60s and 70s. Now there's like 4 people built like him in the NBA, but I don't know if in the next 10, 15 years we're going to see another guy whose standing reach is basically touching the rim. Yeah. And who can actually like also play basketball. Like he's not Sim Boular, who's 7'4", like 850 pounds, and who really can't move well. Like he's actually good. So the people like that don't come along very often, so I'm very excited to see what he can do.
Okay, who is your number 5?
Number 5, who I am also super not confident about being at number 5. I have Michael Porter at. I was gonna say Otto Porter.
Nice.
Otto Porter.
I
have Michael Porter at 5.
Have we only disagreed on 1 and 2 at this point?
Yeah, we do get different because I didn't like glance. I didn't like look at your list like, oh, Max has this, but I do know we get different as it goes further down. But like I said, like we have the same of the 13 players I have in 12. You have probably 10 of them the same players, just in different orders. Porter worries me a little bit just because we saw so much of everyone else this year, and because of the injury, we couldn't see as much of him. I do think he's incredibly exciting as a player. He's, I think, a much better shooter than people remember or realize because he's not built that way. Like he's built like Blake Griffin, but I think he's a better shooter than Blake Griffin is even now. After Blake Griffin added that 3 ball to it, he's a decent ball handler. He had that. I mean, it's not like he rolled an ankle. Like he hurt his spine. That's what really worries me.
Mm-hmm. And
he's
he
not
surgery
crazy
for
efficient.
It too.
Yeah, it's true. Not crazy efficient, not a great passer. I do really, really, really love. This might have like subconsciously bumped him up that the Ringer again with their comms called him an athletic Keith Van Horn, and they called him also. They compared him to Harrison Barnes. I think he's doing him a little bit dirty. Another guy who's super crazy long. He's like 6'11", like a 7'1" reach or 7'1" wingspan. I just think he's again. A lot of question marks with him. I think he has a lower floor than other people around him in this draft. But there are people who are like the only thing they have on him is like they match him with athleticism and they'll go higher in a normal draft. Like someone who just has his athleticism could go like 5 or 6 in any other draft, but he also has more than that. And that's why this draft is so fun. And so like I'm very excited to watch it and see how the whole league shakes out because if he played the whole season, who knew where he'd end up? But if someone with his skill and shooting and athleticism had come out, in like the MCW draft, he's the top 2-3 player.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like him a lot. I think for the Sixers, he'd be a great fit. And I also think the Sixers, if he somehow fell, I think the Sixers are a team that can afford to take a guy, like a high upside guy with injury risk, and just like see how it goes. I agree, though. He has probably the lowest floor of any of these guys we've talked about so far. Probably even lower than probably our next 3 or 4 guys. I think for me, it's like what the Sixers need is a go-to scoring. Assuming Fultz doesn't become that. I don't really think they need wings so much as they just need guys who can like just have that go-to ability, like the way Jason Tatum did for the Celtics in the playoffs. I think for the Sixers, like you have Robert Covington on the wing, you have Dario, you have if JJ Redick comes back, JJ Redick. I think obviously LeBron, if he comes, would or Paul George would throw a wrench in this. But to me, I think Michael Porter Jr. fits in perfectly with what they need. If you're going to go at that position, you don't feel like that.
I disagree. I mean, obviously, if he fell to them at 10, I'd be psyched. But I think a lot of people, a lot of people are calling out the go-to scoring thing, and like shooting is what the Sixers need, which obviously they need those things. But I think more than anything else, they need creating, because Dario and Rocco and JJ last year and Bellinelli, those are guys who essentially had to be set up with the ball, right? So, I mean, I think if I remember correctly, every single 3 that Dario hit last year was assisted.
Yeah.
Right? Covington's were probably close to the same. JJ obviously ran around screens a lot, but he was set up. And say JJ comes back and you have Dario and you have Covington, and there's not many people outside of that who can create. If someone's trapped, if Ben's trapped or Joel's trapped and they pass out to you, that you can't either spot up, shoot, or just pass the ball. You need people who can create things, and I don't know if Porter can do that yet. I would be psyched if he fell to them at 10, but I don't think go-to scoring is their most gaping need right now. Yeah. I think creation and ball handling is important, which I don't think he really can do right now very much. But I think creating for yourself and others, but mostly for yourself, is probably their most important need right now.
Yeah, I think to me, I think of him differently. I think that's maybe why I have him at 5. I think he's more, and he's not going to be this good, but I think more in the T-Mac kind of mold is how I see his game. I think he can put the ball on the floor. I think he can finish inside over around traffic. I think he can pull up. I see him. I think Harrison Barnes to me is not a good comp, because I think Harrison Barnes, in what you're saying, needs other people to set him up. I see him more as a lead guy who can rip, kind of like Jason Tatum. You can just throw him the ball in the corner and he can make a move and pull up, or grab a rebound and go all the way and score. I see him less as a guy who needs to be set up. Even though I know I think people are forgetting how good he was in high school, and I know it's high school, but I think people are looking at who he was when he came back too much, and not considering what a freak offensive player he was in high school.
Yeah. All right, let's go to...
But it's a risk.
It is a risk. Let's go to 6. I think this is where we start to just differ a little bit. Who do you have at 6?
I have Marvin Bagley.
I do not.
Okay, good. You're even lower than Marvin Bagley than I am. I felt like I couldn't put him any lower than 6.
I have Bagley at 7.
Okay.
So let's talk about Bagley. You can talk about a 6, I'll talk about a 7, and then we'll move on from there. But yeah, tell me why you're low on Bagley.
All right, this is a hot take. What differentiates? Would you just look at the way they play, their skill set?
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Can I guess what you're going to say?
Yeah.
Because can I tell you the note I have written down for Marvin Bagley?
What?
Super rich man's Rashawn Holmes.
Oh, close. Christian Wood for me.
Oh, fuck you, man. That's insulting.
It's true, though. Tell me when you look at him.
Come on. Come on.
I mean, Rashawn Holmes can't dribble the ball. He looks like Stanley from The Office. Was that?
Christian Wood's not even in the NBA,
yeah, he's crushing it in the D League, which is where Marvin Bagley is going to be in 5 years. No, I just I just don't like Marvin. I don't think he's going to be bad. I just think he's just...
I mean, you called him Christian Wood, so obviously you don't like him very much.
So the Ringer gives shades of Amari Stoudemire, slim Zach Randolph and Michael Beasley. I just see Michael Beasley. I see Michael Beasley.
Yeah.
I see Christian Wood. I see who's other guys like that. Just like
I said, rich man's Rashawn Holmes.
Rashawn Holmes. I mean, I just he's more of an offense. He has more to his game than that. But I just think he's like he's a points and rebounds power forward, and I just don't value that at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. His jumpers, like, I mean, he hit almost 40% from three this year, but it was not on that many attempts. His jumper doesn't look all that great. I don't think he's a great defender. He's a bad free throw shooter. He's not a good passer. I like Wendell Carter a little bit more than him, and I haven't put Wendell Carter ahead of him, even though I'm like regretting now that I'm talking about Marvin Bagley not doing that, and probably by the time the draft comes around, I will make that switch. But other people are just so high on Marvin Bagley that I feel like I must be missing something. But to me, I don't see Amari Stoudemire at all. He just doesn't, like, when I watch him, I just feel like he's just more athletic and bigger than a lot of guys, and that's how he scores. And when I see him like put his back to the basket and try to make a move, he's like fumbling the ball, but then it works because he just turns around with a hook shot and he just jumps over everyone, and it doesn't matter. Or he grabs his own offensive rebound after missing and puts it back, and it's like, this isn't going to work in the NBA. Like, everyone's 6'11" and athletic, and he doesn't even have a super long wingspan. Like, I don't get it.
This is a good transition because at number 6, I have Wendell Carter Jr.
All right, nice.
I think realistically and ideally, if at 10 you're looking at someone, you're like, okay, we're not going to get a starter at 10. Probably our starting lineup's pretty set if you bring LeBron in, especially. We want to get like a really solid role player, a key backup. I think he's your ideal Embiid insurance type player. Just as a great solid 5 backup, which he's the type of guy that we talked about all last season, that who the Sixers need to back up Embiid. Actually, I think he's better than a lot of that stuff. And I honestly think, too, I know we're all excited about him, but I think he is what everyone thinks Jonah Bolden is, but better. I think people are getting really excited about Jonah Bolden, and I'm excited about Jonah Bolden, but I think people's expectations might be a bit high, and what they're really picturing in their head is Wendell Carter Jr. With a thicker body, which is what we've been begging for all season. Thick body. He has good footwork. He's a smart passer. He can pass the ball a bit. His jump shot's a little weird, but so is Al Horford's, and it fucking works. So again, and after the whole Fultz thing, which I'm sure we'll get into when the question stuff comes up, if the jump shot works, don't fucking fuck with it. Just let it happen. Don't mess with any shots anymore. Just let him shoot it that way if it works. It doesn't matter how it looks. So that's how I feel about Carter Jr. And I think that's why I have him in front of Bagley. I did go back and forth on those guys a bit. But Bagley is, to me, also what we kind of talked about before we started recording, where there's a bunch of guys, and this is not necessarily a negative thing, a bunch of guys in my top 12 who just strike me as boring. And boring to me is not like, it's not necessarily negative. It's just like, at best, they project to be a solid pro, which is great. If you can come out of every draft with a solid pro, you're set. But I don't see much more out of him than that. I don't think he's a D-League player like you, but I don't think he's much more than a solid pro. And I think we're not doing this really Sixers-centric and Sixers in mind, but it informed my rankings a tiny bit, and I think that's probably why Carter jumped in front of Bagley as well.
I think, too, I'm realizing I really, in my heart of hearts, feel like Wendell Carter is better than Marvin Bagley, and you've given me the strength to finally admit that and to alter my big board. So I'm going to move Wendell Carter up to 6 and Bagley down to 7. I don't hate Bagley. What was that?
Now you're making me look bad. Because now it looks like a copy. Because now you're copying me.
I'm copying you.
Making the pod look bad. Come on.
Well, here's what I'll say.
I think we get a little different coming up, though.
I don't hate Marvin Bagley. Obviously, I have him 7. I just think he's vastly overrated, and I think he put up big numbers, but I like Wendell Carter better. I like a lot of players in this draft better than him, and I think there's like a chance that he I I don't know, fills out his body a little bit and becomes more of a. Like, I think his future is he's better served filling out his power forward skills than being like a slow wing, a slow big wing who can't shoot, which is what he is to me. Like that's the Christian Wood comparison to me, is that Christian Wood is also a power forward with small forward skills, except he has a power forward's like athletic skill set. And Marvin Bagley's like a good leaper. He's like has a good second jump. He gets up for rebounds, but he is not getting by anyone in the NBA who plays small forward.
I will say this too, and I think this is every year as well, but it's especially true this year. A lot of these players, their development and their pro career is really going to depend on who drafts them. Mm-hmm. You know, like there are so many question marks with a lot of these guys, and they have a lot of things that are great for them, which is obviously why they're top 10 NBA picks in a draft in a year where the draft is deep. But you know, there's gonna be a lot of people that come into this draft on these bad teams that have bad player development, bad coaching, bad roster structuring, that they just don't pan out because they don't have the guidance or the coaching or the development that they're going to need to really do well in the long run and be their best version of themselves. So that's where I feel about a lot of these guys too. But all right, so we just went through 6 and 7, right? Because you had Carter 7. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's move on to 8. Who do you have at 8?
All right. I have Lonnie Walker.
You are the current, like, the guy in the front of the parade who's marching with that big baton in, like, the marching band. Who's that? What's that his name? Any marching band people out there? That's you for the person. That's you for the Lonnie Hive right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say. There's a bit of like virtue signaling going on for me where it's like, I really believe in Lonnie Walker. And maybe if other people believed in Lonnie Walker, I would be okay with like having him below Mikal Bridges or something. But I want people to know that like, no, I really like Lonnie Walker.
Sure.
So maybe there's a little bit of that going on too, where it's like just throwing him out there above those two guys just to like.
My number 8 is not Lonnie Walker.
Okay.
So sell me on Lonnie Walker. Who will be in the workout tomorrow with the Sixers.
Okay, yeah. So I look at Lonnie Walker, and the person who comes to mind, I think the comps I've seen, I don't love. The comp that I think makes sense to me is Victor Oladipo. Like I think he can be a ball handling shooting guard, like a combo guard.
You're talking about this year Oladipo.
Like this year, yeah, like good Victor Oladipo. He's like a crazy athlete. He's like 6'5", about 200, super long wingspan, like a 6'10 plus wingspan. Jumps out of the gym, put back dunks, has a great handle. It shows some flashes of being a pretty good passer.
The best hair in the draft.
Best hair in the draft by far. And I think too, like you look at guys who got better as the year went on, and he came into the season with like I think a knee injury or something, so an issue with his knee that kind of held him back, and also
it was a torn meniscus.
Yeah,
which I also have. Not great.
And he was inserted into the starting lineup in the second half of the season, and his stats after that point and just his production after that point really jumped. He shot like 35% on the year from 3, but I think he's a better three-point shooter than that. Like he's a good free throw shooter, shot 74%. His jumper just looks nice. He gets good elevation. He has good form. It's pretty quick. He can pull up off the dribble. He can catch and shoot. There were games where he really was I guess that comes across maybe as streaky, but there were games where he really showed an ability to like just punish teams from outside. Yeah, and I just think he fits really well with what the Sixers need, and I could see him being. I think he has the ability to be a really good defender, and showed some of that in college too, with just like on ball, ability to steal the ball and take it the length of the court. He has the athleticism to like jump passing lanes, and I think he has the size and the length to be a really good defender at the 2. So I just really like him a lot, and I think for what the Sixers need, I also think he's a really nice fit, and he'll be there at 10 almost certainly.
I think he does have that skill of creating, which I was talking about earlier. But
yeah,
I have Mikal Bridges here. And I think the Villanova connection obviously has people all excited. I would be surprised if Mikal Bridges was there at 10 for the Sixers. I'd be incredibly excited if he was, because I feel like we were spoiled a little bit with getting, like, for example, look, this team is really good this year, the Sixers team. And two of their most important players were undrafted, right? There's Robert Covington and there's TJ McConnell. Mm-hmm. Most teams have no one impacting their roster in any way that are undrafted. None. So it kind of, I think it has messed with people's brains a little bit as to what you get at value-wise at what pick. I think Mikal Bridges is essentially probably Robert Covington plus. And at 10, that might not seem like a great bargain to people, but it really is. That's
he's sort of like good Danny Green, right? Like Danny Green.
Yo, I fucking love Danny Green.
Yeah, like
that 1 year Danny Green was fucking great. God, Danny Green ruled that 1 year. Tony Snell's another option, but Tony Snell fucking stinks. But it's that kind of archetype, right? He's a great shooter already, and I would say I would go as far as to say great. Got crazy wingspan for his height. He's right around the size of Covington. Actually, he's built similar. One of the big pluses, and I think this is going to play into Villanova fans' hearts and minds here too, is that there are a lot of teams in the NCAA where they play hero ball or like very inconsistent, like kind of just like moving around stuff. And I do think the Villanova basketball, which is very similar in the NBA to kind of Spurs type basketball, moving the ball around, no real one hero to the team, everyone steps up, everyone does their best, everyone plays together as a team, is essentially what the Sixers are trying to do at a pro level. So he's already played it in the system. He's like a system quarterback in that way. He's Carson Wentz. He still has the same kind of like similar flaws as Covington. I don't think he's an incredible ball handler, obviously. He needs to put on some weight and some strength as well. But I think he's honestly the ideal fit for the Sixers at 10. I don't think he's going to be there at 10, which is why I have him at 8. But if you walk out on draft night with him at 10, and that's it, and like all your other picks are gone for some reason or whatever, and you only have him, you're in fucking incredible shape. And that's what I like. He's just like, and he's ready from day one. A lot of these like Doncic and Ayton are. Jackson probably is. But outside of that, I think Bridges contributes day one more than anyone else in this draft. And I'm very, very high on him. And I don't think he's going to be there at 10, but if he is, I'll be fucking stoked.
Yeah, I really like Mikal Bridges. I have him right behind where you have him. So I have Walker at 8 and Mikal Bridges at 9. And I just he's such a perfect fit. It's almost like too perfect a fit that I think you're right, not be there at 10. It's going to be one of those situations where he goes at 9 like CJ McCollum in 2013, and you're just it just kills you that you miss out on him.
Let's play a little bit of, let's do some fanfic here for a second.
Yeah.
So say the Cavs know LeBron is leaving, right? He's there at 8. Do they take him at 8, or do you think they go for like a Colin Sexton or like a Trae Young instead? Because I think if he doesn't go at 8, I think he falls to the Sixers. I don't think he'll end up at the Knicks. I think the Knicks are going for a flashy gunner type because the Knicks need to be the Knicks at all times. They can't just pick like a solid contributor. They have to be like flashy and fun.
I honestly, I think he could go to the Knicks, but if he doesn't go to the Knicks, I kind of agree with you that if you assume that the top 5 is going to be Aiden, Doncic, Jackson, Bagley, Bamba, right? Like
most Porter likely in there as well, yeah.
Yeah, and like Porter. But let's say the top 5 is those 5 guys. Like then you have Trae Young, Porter, Wendell Carter. If I'm the Cavs, I think probably one of those 8 guys. Like that's a solid top 8. I feel like there is a drop off after 8. Just I think in most people's opinion. So I think one of Aiden, Doncic, Jaren Jackson, Bagley, Bamba, Trae Young, Porter, Carter will be the pick for them. Maybe Carter would be the guy that if they think LeBron's leaving, they go like, okay, this isn't this isn't high upside enough. We have Tristan Thompson's contract on the books and all that. But at the same time, Wendell Carter's 19 and, is a pretty decent piece for them to start out with in their rebuild. So I don't know. I guess I could see them not going with Mikal Bridges just because he's almost 22, which is part of why I have Lonnie Walker, who's 19, ahead of him.
Yeah.
But, I could see the Knicks also going with Mikal Bridges, though. But I think you're right. Like, if he gets past maybe the Bulls and the Cavs, or he gets past the Bulls and there is a player at 8 like Trae Young, like Mo Bamba, like Porter, I think that's probably where the Cavs go if they think LeBron's leaving because they just want a high upside guy.
Quickly, while we're discussing this, which team in the lottery do you think is the number one candidate to make a reach, like everyone laughs at them pick?
I think the Cavs.
I think it's
probably,
the Bulls.
I think the Bulls.
I don't think the Bulls have any idea what they're doing.
The thing about the Bulls, though, it's like, how much can they really reach? It's like they'll either take Wendell Carter or they'll take one of the top guys. Like, I don't know who else. Maybe Miles Bridges would be that for them, or like, I don't think they would take Colin Sexton because they have Chris Dunn and they have the guard who they traded, slam dunk contest champion. I'm blanking on his name from the Timberwolves.
I know who it is. I'm just not going to say it because I want to hear you suffer.
No, I'm going to move past it.
Yep.
Now I'm only thinking about that. I guess I think the Cavs are probably that team. I kind of have to throw in the Magic because the Magic are always that team. And I think a lot of people are mocking Trae Young to them, which I think to me kind of is that same thing of reaching where they – at 6, they're going to get their choice of a lot of really good players. And if they go with Trae Young, I'd be a little disappointed with that as one of their fans. But
yeah, I could see the Bulls being like, you know what, Zaire Smith. It's like, all right, cool.
Maybe. I do think like the Sixers are in such a great position because I do see this as like there are 11 guys I really like and then a bit of a drop off for me. Like the 10 that I think everyone has plus Lonnie Walker for me. And I like Sexton's all right. I think there's a real drop off after that though, where you get into like Gilgeous-Alexander and Zaire Smith and Williams and all that. So I guess I feel like the Sixers are in a really nice position because even if the draft just goes like chalk through 10, I think they get their pick of a really nice player. And there's a chance that someone like the Bulls or the Cavs or the Knicks even does take someone like Colin Sexton or Kevin Knox or Gilgeous-Alexander or Zaire Smith earlier than they should. And now you have a choice maybe of Porter or maybe somehow Bamba's dropped or Wendell Carter is there at 10. And that's a pretty good position to be, or Mikal Bridges, and that's a pretty good position to be in.
Yeah. All right, so let's take on the next pick. We are now at, I'm crossing off the numbers as we go up, so I can't really tell where we are. We're at 9.
We're at 9? I thought we just did Walker and Bridges. 8, 9.
No, I had Mikal Bridges at 8.
Oh, you don't have Walker. Who's your 9?
No, because my 9 is Miles Bridges.
Okay, that's my 10.
Yeah, okay, that's what happened there. Yeah, because I'm confused myself because we started talking about Lonnie Walker a bunch, but I haven't gotten to Lonnie Walker yet. Miles Bridges for me is again one of those guys who's just like real boring.
Man, I don't agree. I'm very much. I really struggled with whether I wanted Miles Bridges ahead of Mikal Bridges.
Really?
Yeah, I think I'm higher on. Go ahead.
No, I know a lot of people are higher on Miles Bridges. I think most people are higher on Miles Bridges. But I just don't. I think he's just missing too many things. And I know I just said that this is what happens at like this part of the draft and is what you dream for anyway. But I think he just like his absolute ceiling is like a pretty solid role player, which again is probably what you're getting at this point in the draft. But every other person around here, I think, has that thing where like, yeah, they'll probably be a pretty good role player, but like if they can turn this thing on and they can stick with this or do this, then they can jump above that. And I don't know if he has that one skill where if he really like kind of hones that and makes it like his go-to or calling card, that he can be above a role player. You know, I think he is like either like a role playing guy or like a 6-man type potential, which again is great, but I just don't know what the thing that will set him apart from this class in the next couple of years is going to be. And like I'm like wording this like he's like 30th on my list, and he's obviously not. But I just don't think he's a very exciting player. And I have him above people who are actually who I do think are exciting. But yeah, I don't have a ton to say about him. I think he's reliable and he's solid, and you get what you get basically. I don't think I want him on the Sixers. I think there's already people like him on the team, and I don't know if he's necessarily good enough. Has enough of a separation above people on the team to really make it worth the pick at that point. I'd rather, if it came down to it, I'd rather maybe take a reach on somebody a little bit. But yeah, that's where I'm at with Miles. Where do you have Miles at? Let's jump ahead a little bit.
So I have him at 10. So I don't have him super high, but I think it's because I really like Walker, and it was tough for me with Mikal and Miles. I ended up putting Mikal a notch above Miles Bridges. I guess I don't see him that way. I think at first I was like, oh, he's like Tobias Harris, or he's like a more athletic Dario, in that role where he's like a combo forward. The more I watch him, though, the more I think like Jason Tatum is kind of what I'm seeing. And
really?
I think part of me putting him at 10, I think, and considering putting him at 8 or 9, is that I feel like I got burned last year going like, looking at Jason Tatum and thinking like, okay, this guy doesn't bring anything to the like this is a boring,
sure,
just does a little bit of everything and whatever. And I watch Miles Bridges and I see that same like he can create, like you talk about like shot creators. I think he can really do that in a way that Tobias Harris can to an extent, but I think Miles Bridges is an awesome ball handler. He's a really good shooter. Shot 85% from the line, 36% from three. I think like has the potential to be that. Those two things together, I think give me a sense that he could be a really nice 3-point shooter. He's a good passer. He's like super quick off, like can just take like one jab. The Jason Tatum thing, I think for me, is you can give him the ball in the corner. He takes like one jab step and then gets by someone and dunks over somebody. I just think he has more scoring potential than I realized, and I think that's what I kept coming back to him and going like, man, every time I'd watch him, I was like, I really like this guy.
I think you're influenced by your like whatever the opposite of buyer's remorse is for Jason Tatum. You're influenced by that.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I think I am, as you're saying that, and I'm kind of thinking about what you're saying too. I think I'm influenced in a way because like I said, like this is not a Sixers centric big board, but it definitely plays into my thoughts on it. I think I'm kind of influenced by being used to having to really, really get excited about like the top 3-4 players, and really look for that like the tiny little thing that separates these guys from everyone else. Where I think maybe you're right. Maybe I am kind of underrating him because he's not crazy flashy. In the same way, I also underrated Jason Tatum, and I also called Jason Tatum boring. So maybe you're right. I'm not gonna switch him in my lineup, but maybe you're right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he is kind of flashy. He is like, I don't know. I feel like I watch him, and it's the opposite of when I watch Bagley. Like Bagley scores a lot, but I don't really like. Nothing he's doing is impressing me that much. When I watch Miles Bridges, it's like I guess it's because he's not as freakishly athletic that he can't just lean on those things and big. But I mean, he is like really talented with the ball in his hands. He gets by guys and has like nice dump, like no look dump off passes. I think he's like, I don't know, super skilled. I'm kind of surprised that more people aren't high on him, or that there's been so much. I think Sixers fans really don't want him, and I like him a lot. But at the same time, I think there are so many guys who I like that it's hard. I mean, it's a good position to be in, I guess. Like I feel like in the past or in a normal draft with the Sixers picking a 10 here, we'd be like praying that Miles Bridges falls so we don't have to take like Troy Brown.
Right.
Or Musa or whatever. Like I think this draft has a lot of talent in that like 7 to 13 range. I like.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to number 10 now.
You're number 10,
which
yeah.
I will take on very shortly because we already talked about the guy I have at 10. I have Lonnie Walker at 10.
Okay.
You are basically his campaign manager, so we don't have to spend much time on him. Everything you said is correct about him. I do think he's a very exciting player, but the reason I have him at 10 and not like 8 is because, and I know this is wrong, I am always very wary of climbers, people who, are mocked at like 18 and then start like slowly climbing up in these workouts and like these leaks are happening. I'm wary of that, even though the last two people that you can describe as climbers were Donovan Mitchell and Kristaps Porzingis.
Dude, that Donovan Mitchell, to me, that's what I see. I don't see that like he's not the same player, but it's the same thing where he's a freshman, like a young player who was kind of overlooked, went to wasn't at Kentucky or Duke or whatever.
Yeah, not a crazy high prestige school.
Yeah, and it's just gotten better and better, and is like such an incredible has all the tools that it's almost like how did this guy get overlooked to this point? And that's what I see in Lonnie Walker.
Well, that's all I have to say about him. You already talked about him, but I'm just a little wary is all. Who do you have at 10?
I'm all aboard the Lonnie Walker hype. So that was my Miles Bridges was my 10. So now I think now we're both at 11.
We are. You go 11 first, because you're not going to like my pick.
I have Trae Young at 11.
Okay. He doesn't make my list.
Yeah, I think part of me is like, I'm lying to myself a little bit if I say that if the Sixers drafted Trae Young at 10, I wouldn't be kind of excited. Like, putting him at 11 and for a little while wondering if he was going to be off my top 12 also. It's like, at the same time, I just watch him and it's like, there's a chance he's absolutely nothing. There's a chance that he's basically Isaiah Cannon or like Jimmer Fredette. But there's also a chance.
I don't think he's quite Jimmer, but he's not quite Steph either.
I think like best case, Steph Curry's out of the question. I think like best case he's like, Bibby was one I saw that I liked. I think he can be like, he's a really nice passer, which I like. Like he's an awesome playmaker. And I think that really, even if he's not able to score the way he was in college, which he's definitely not going to be able to, but even if he's just like a stretch the floor guy and can like shoot from mid range and pull up a little bit, I think that combined with being such an awesome passer, it's like a better version of what like Kendall Marshall was that one year that Kendall Marshall was good. That's kind of what I see.
That makes sense.
And I think like he does have a pretty high upside just because he is able to do something that basically only Steph Curry is able to do, or that we've really only seen Steph be able to do, which is just like take dumb shots and have them go in consistently. Yeah. And I don't know, there's part of me that wants to buy into that, especially because he's such a good passer, and he's not just a volume shooter. Like he can do other things. I just think his limitations size-wise, he's 6'2" and has a 6'3" wingspan. He's unathletic as hell. He basically is Steph. He's like all the things you would say about Steph Curry coming into the draft, you would say about Trae Young. I just don't think – I think for every Steph, there are 50 guys who are nowhere close to that and flame out because they don't have the tools to – they don't have what you need to play in the NBA. Trae Young will probably, if he doesn't pan out in the NBA, be awesome in like China or in the Spanish league or something. But I think to me, in the way that I guess like Jimmer has, but I think to me, he's exciting enough that if the Sixers took him at 10, I'd still be happy about that.
Yeah, I have at number 10 Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who I feel like much higher on than many, many, many people, which means I'm probably wrong because I'm stupid as hell. I believe in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think he is, he doesn't jump out of the gym. He's not really a knockdown shooter. He grinds defensively. He's a great defender. He has the length to do it. He plays hard. He does shoot the three. He shot the three pretty well in college. I don't know how well it's going to translate. But again, if it's an ugly shot, if it goes in, just let it happen. He can get to the rim at will sometimes, and he can just, he's so long that he can finish over guys who are so much bigger than him just by reaching his arm out and just putting it up there against the glass. He's a good playmaker. He's still, he's not even 20. He's young-ish. He's not super young, but he has time to get that basketball IQ up a little bit more. It's not the best, but also, he played on a Kentucky team where, he would fill in as like, that team was built where it's like, all right, go to a guy here, go to a guy here, go to a guy here, where like you didn't have to be star every night, and I think that fits really well with what the Sixers are trying to do, especially since we're talking about the 10 pick right now, which is where the Sixers are, where like he cannot be the number one guy in a night, but it also doesn't mean he's taking the night off either. Which I don't know. I like the way he plays. I'm slightly worried that he's Michael Carter Williams, or that he is, without all the hype, essentially what Andrew Wiggins is now, which is not good. But at 10, I think he's probably a little bit of a risk, a little bit of a stretch, but there's like a 65 to 70% chance he's not much in the pros, and there's like a 30 to 35% chance that he's like the hidden gem of this draft. So I like him at 10.
So I had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander off my board at one point, and just in doing research for this pod and in like reevaluating after creating my big board last month, I moved him to 12. So he's my number 12. I really hate his body. I think that's like a big part of it for me, is that he's so skinny. He's 6'6", 180, and he just has like no frame at all to put on weight. He's just like, he has those Andrew Wiggins shoulders.
Yeah, he's very Wigginsy.
He's very Wigginsy in his body, and I don't know. There's a lot of things about him. I don't like his frame at all. His jumper looks garbage, and the form's bad. It takes forever. It's just not good. I mean, decent. He shot 40%, but taking only 57 the whole year. Decent free throw shooter, so that's fine. But his jumper does not look good to me. I do really like his game. He's a super good ball handler. He finishes inside. I think for me also part of it's the fit with the Sixers is not there. He does all the things he's basically Markelle Fultz post shoulder injury, and without the frame that Markelle Fultz has.
But with confidence.
But with confidence. He's what Markelle Fultz I think will be if Markelle Fultz never gets his jumper back and just decides to be Dwayne Wade and just do all the things except take long jumpers. So
I mean, if you can just decide to be Dwayne Wade, I'd take that.
Yeah. No, I just think I guess when I'm looking at Fultz, it's I see a lot of the same. A lot of things I would like about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Fultz has right now. It's just that Fultz doesn't have the jumper. But I also think that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander doesn't have the jumper. I think it's he shot 40% on not that many attempts, and his form looks awful, and I don't know how much you can grow it from there unless he rebuilds it. It takes way too long for it to be effective, and I don't think he's going to be a guy who can pull up and create his own shot that way. So for me, I guess I was gonna say for me, I see him as a J.R. Smith kind of role, but I don't think he is J.R. in the sense that J.R. can create his own shot and hit threes and all that. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can get to the rack, and that's kind of the extent of what I see.
Yeah, I had written down in my notes to him that I refuse to budge because I've liked him. I liked him for a good chunk of the season, and I refuse to budge on liking him. And I also wrote down that he is dollar store Dwayne Wade. So
he has a little bit of Tony Roden going on, that kind of same thing that makes me like Tony Roden. I like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and the same things I don't like about Tony Roden, I also don't like about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
He's a better shooter, but he's not as athletic as Roden.
Yeah.
And I would trade that. I'd make that trade in a heartbeat. So,
okay, so that's my 12. You have a 13th guy, right? Or did you already give your 12,
yeah.
Or was Shai Gilgeous was your 11?
He was my 11.
So it was Trae Young. I had Trae Young as 11. So do you have Trae Young? He's not on your 12 or 13.
He's not on my list. My 12, I have two guys because I just couldn't decide between the two of them. Not crazy excited about either of them, but I think they're both close there. I had Sexton and Knox.
Okay.
I think Sexton is probably the biggest coin flip out of every player we've talked about, where he could either be mediocre poor man's John Wall, or he could be literally Tony Roden. That's the actual talent level there. They can go either way. And then Knox, again, he's just he can shoot and he can score, but he can't do really much else of anything. And I think this is where the drop off happens at like 11, 12. And I think that's why these two really don't do a ton for me. I think Sexton probably has a higher ceiling than Knox, but a lower floor.
Yeah.
And I have them both down there because I was not going to spend a ton of time splitting up my 12 guys.
Yeah, so. I agree. I think it really does drop off after this point. I feel bad for the Clippers, who have the 13th and 14th pick, I believe, in this draft. Or 12 and 13, because I feel like that's exactly where it falls off. It's like, yeah, maybe they'll get Lonnie Walker or Colin Sexton or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but then it's like Robert Williams, Kevin Knox, Zaire Smith. It really like falls apart. And it's fortunate for the Sixers because they're right there. They'll get their choice at very least of a couple guys that we mentioned who we liked.
Yeah. I do think Sexton as a player is, as I said earlier about some of these guys, he's very, very much, his career will be at the whim of who drafts him. Because he's going to need minutes and he's going to need development. But at like the 13, 14, 15 range, if he ends up there, there's not a ton of either of those things. So...
Yeah, Clippers wouldn't be terrible. 11,
no, yeah, because they're in that spot. But like, if you start going into like the deep teens, then like he might be kind of screwed.
Yeah. I could see him going if the Hornets are looking to move on from Kemba Walker at some point. I could see him going there.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense as a fit.
Okay, you want to go to questions at this point?
Yeah, let's go to questions.
Okay, cool. So Swag Champ asks us what we think about a DeMar DeRozan trade.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I'm out on DeMar DeRozan.
I want nothing to do with DeMar DeRozan.
It's like, I just, it's not what the Sixers need, right? Like, I don't want them to bring in someone who, he can create his own shot with this thing that nobody else in the Sixers can really do right now. But I don't need them to bring in a guy who can't spread the floor and is a little bit older than their core. Like, to me, he is bringing in a B-plus player to add to a core where he is going to be overshadowed by Embiid and Simmons and hopefully Fultz in the next like 2 or 3 years. Probably
he'll be overshadowed by Dario.
Like, if I'm going to add someone like a top level guy, it needs to be someone who I think is on par or better than what we have now. And obviously he's better than whatever they have at the 2 next season, but I just think he quickly becomes like the 3rd or 4th best player on the team. And I think he commands too much of the offense to be that.
Yeah, I have no interest in really good Gerald Henderson.
Yeah. Wow, that's one way of putting it.
It is, and I did it.
Colin asked, Free Colin on Twitter asked, if 2 max players showed interest in the Sixers, what would you be willing to give up to move Bayless's contract? Now, I think they're going to really need to move Bayless's contract regardless, even just to get one max guy. The question, I guess, becomes like if you could sign and trade, you could probably move like Covington and potentially Fultz if you're trading for like Kawhi or something, and then adding LeBron to that. It's interesting. I think if you're getting a top level player, it doesn't matter. Like, I would give up a protected first if we had to, just because
I'd give up an unprotected first. If you're talking about signing LeBron and then bringing in, say, Kawhi for this example, and then so you sign LeBron, and then to get Kawhi, you got to do Covington, Bayless, unprotected first. I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
because Bayless, they're doing you a favor. Kawhi is going to take every one of Covington's minutes anyway, and if Kawhi's here, you're not going to need that first because it's going to be like a 28th pick anyway, hopefully. And where are you going to find the minutes for that guy? It's at that point you're kind of breaking even.
Yeah. I feel like for me, if you know you're going to get the guy, there's very little I wouldn't trade Bayless for, or give up Bayless's contract and give along with that.
Because like why even bother protecting the pick? Because like if you end up bringing in Kawhi and LeBron, and then you still have to end up giving like a 6th pick or whatever, like that's on you, man. You fucked up. Like it's not going to be a lottery pick. And if it is, then like fuck, man, you really screwed that somehow. So you really can't put a protection on that. So I'd say unprotected pick at least one. Covington / Dario. Covington makes more sense because he costs you more money, so he clears up more space. And then they're doing you a favor by taking on Jarrett Bayless.
Matthew Williams asked, how realistic is it that the Sixers get any max player this year? What are the chances? 20%, 40%? What do we think?
70%.
I think so too.
Yeah. I think if it's not LeBron, it's Paul George. If it's not him, then it drops significantly, but I wouldn't be surprised if... I mean, max contract is one thing, right? Because that's a lot of money. So if you're not talking about LeBron or Paul George or a Kawhi trade, which I would consider answering the question
or
for this
McCollum
scenario.
Or something, yeah.
I don't think, yeah. I mean, outside of those three, I don't think it's going to happen, but I do think like the likelihood that LeBron comes to the Sixers is...
It's pretty damn good.
It's not more likely than not, but it's close. I think, all right, so he's leaving Cleveland. Mm-hmm. He's not staying in Cleveland. Yeah. I would say the Sixers have probably like the second best chances of landing him.
After Houston?
I'd say after Los Angeles.
You really think he's going to go to L.A.?
I think him and Paul George are going to go to L.A. I think that's the most likely outcome of this.
I don't even think
that's not. I think he comes here.
I don't even think that team's that good though. I just don't get. I don't get it for him. Like being as like ring conscious as he is, and like dynasty conscious as he is, and legacy. Like it goes to that team with Paul George, and like is that significantly better than what he had this year with Kevin Love and the players?
No, but if you believe in the whole LeBron as GM idea, where LeBron builds a team around him. He has a lot more leeway to build a team there than he does here. And if he wants to join a pre-built team, I think he would probably go to Houston if they can do it. So I think it's like... So LeBron... We know LeBron's leaving Cleveland. I'd say it's like 45% chance he would go to like an LA. Like 30 Philly, and then the rest is Houston or like some weird wild card team is like a 3% chance.
Yeah, to me, I mean, I don't get it from his perspective, but for me, like, I can't see it also because I feel like him going to the Lakers, it's all the negatives of like Kevin Durant going to the Warriors, but none of the positives. It's like because they're the Lakers, even though they suck ass, people are gonna look at it as like a front running, like, oh, LeBron went to the fucking Lakers with Paul George. Even that team's not even going to be that good. But people are going to look at it in that same way, like in a front-running way because it's the Lakers. But he's going to get none of the benefit that KD got for actually going to a dynasty.
But it does kill the he's afraid of the West argument.
Yeah, but is that...
Which plays into that.
But he's also not even going to make the final. He probably won't even make the conference finals if he goes to the Lakers.
It's also very true.
Hemi76 asked, does that Fultz shooting from the ground video change our view on how this played out this last season?
What does it mean this played out?
Does it change the way that we view how everything played out last season? I think is what he's asking.
No, I mean, I think it, first of all, was disgusting to watch.
Yeah.
But I think even without seeing it, we all knew something like this happened. I think if you had to take a consensus, like a Family Feud style consensus on like what happened, it would be like a mishmash of people saying it's all mental, people saying he hurt himself trying something new, and then people saying probably a bit of both. And I'm in the probably a bit of both camp. So seeing it wasn't great, but I was convinced that it happened anyway. So it really doesn't change my opinion of what was going on. And also, he's a fucking 19-year-old kid. It's not like he sat down and was like, I'm going to start shooting the ball from the floor because I know everything. He was told this by people he trusted. So it's not on him, which again does not change my opinion of the year. And I do think part of it is also still mental. So yeah, it doesn't really change my opinion of it. I would have preferred to never have seen that video. But it doesn't really change the way I feel about the whole situation.
I'm just happy that he's working out with Drew Hanlon this summer, and I have some trust that it'll come back around. I think if we start seeing if he plays summer league or we start seeing videos of him and it's not better by like late July, early August, like heading into the season, I'll be a little worried. But right now, I'm holding out some hope that it's going to normalize and he'll be fine. I guess
it'll be harder for him than it was for Embiid working with Hanlon, I think, because Embiid didn't really have a jump shot and then built one. Fultz is rebuilding a broken one, which I think is definitely harder.
Yeah. I guess I'll go into the last question because this is related. Chris K asked if we had to choose between. I picked this one also because I think it has a funny typo. If you had to choose between one player getting a jumpsuit and one never developing one, who would you choose, Fultz or Simmons? And obviously he means jump shot.
But I will say this to start off: there is no player who would look better in a jumpsuit than Dario Saric.
See, I feel like you have to be tall to rock the jumpsuit and look good. So I think
He's 6'10".
no. I'm agreeing. I'm saying it's got to be Simmons.
In
this scenario, Simmons over Fultz, but Dario also would look good. Embiid probably the best in a jumpsuit of anyone on the team. I think the more outlandishly tall you are, the more you can get away with it. If you're TJ McConnell, you look bad in a jumpsuit.
I mean, I'm also picturing like Michael Myers jumpsuit, like not like I'm picturing like basically like a Dickies jumpsuit overalls for like a
okay.
Which like
definitely Dario then. You're right.
We'll see James Harden wearing that to a game next year. So, I think the answer's obvious.
That you want Fultz to develop it.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah,
I think Ben Simmons could
because Fultz without a jump shot is kind of bad. Ben Simmons without a jump shot is already pretty good.
I honestly think also it's like not that important. I think I'd rather. This is maybe a hot take. I'd rather guarantee myself that Ben Simmons develops a left hand in finishing around the rim and just becomes a better finisher. And if that meant him never getting a jump shot out of the 10-footer that he's sort of comfortable taking sometimes, I would take that trade. I would rather have him just be a really nice finisher around the rim and be able to use both his left and right hand versus him develop a jumper. Whereas Fultz, if he develops a jumper, that's like the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, look at it this way. What would you rather have? Ben Simmons be a 40% three-point shooter and Markelle Fultz be a 25%, or vice versa?
Say it again.
The answer: would you rather have Ben Simmons be a 40% three-point shooter and Fultz be a 25%, or Fultz be a 40% and Ben Simmons be a 25%?
Yeah, totally.
It's obviously Fultz.
Yeah. That's all I got.
I got nothing else, man.
We went like an hour and 40 minutes, so I think that's probably good.
Everyone turned this off about 58 minutes ago.
Right after I called Marvin Bagley Christian Wood.
Hopefully it was before I called Sachin Gupta Sanjay Gupta.
That was definitely the drop-off point for...
Yeah, that's when everyone was like, yo, I'm unfollowing this podcast.
Sanjay Gupta. Oh, man. All right.
It's kind of close.
That was pretty close, but... The image of Sanjay Gupta in the war room with Hanky is funny.
I shouldn't have brought it up again. I just screwed myself over. All right. Yeah. So we will probably have our next pod will probably be after the draft, right?
I think so. Or right before if anything starts to come out.
Yeah, if anything else was to happen. But if everything goes, smooth sailing until then, I probably wouldn't be after the draft. So, yeah, thanks for listening. Feel free to mock us for our big board takes. And we'll talk to you guys next time.
All right. See ya.